Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Olight OKS2, which may have been upside down. The latest multi-tool offering by Olight, but one thing we should clear up straight away is that this is a rebranded multi-tool. Specifically, this one is by Roxon, as we can see the branding here. Now, we've had other Olight multi-tool rebrandings before, however they've typically been by Nextool. So I think this is the first one by Roxon that I've had on the channel. I don't think this guy was Roxon, but we'll see. So first of all, let's go ahead and get a bit of a size comparison going. So up top we have a 91mm Swiss Army knife, and on bottom a 58mm, which is attracting the light from my lights a bit too much. And then let's go for a comparison with the P1 and the K1. Get that thickness comparison in there. And next up, let's go for a tool overview. So this does have a dedicated blade. We can see here we have the thumb stud, and it does actually flick out quite nicely. You can see we have a nice kind of spear point style blade, nice tip, good amount of belly, and a liner lock. On the same scale, now this is a little unusual. As a knife guy, you kind of expect the default position of a clip to be on the quote-unquote lock side, or not necessarily the presentation side, which this would technically be. But this is a nice deep carry clip with enough ramp, and it does entirely conceal the tool in the pocket. On the outside of the frame, we have a glass breaker, which looks like a little ceramic ball there. Coming over to the other side of the tool, we have, similar to the knife, a liner lock saw. And on that same side is the rest of our main tools. And you can see we've got no easy way to get those out. That's because of this guy. So this kind of looks a little bit like an axis lock nub. However, if we push this way, you can see it presents us all of our tools. Let's go through these one by one. This is the combo tool, and it is a similar style that we've seen on the other Olight branded tools. So we have a cap lifter, flip that around so you can actually see the bevel, a can opener, and a little bit of a screwdriver on the end. And then once open, these actually lock in place. And to unlock, you just push this nub the opposite way. Next up, we have an awl and reamer. And I must say, this is incredibly sharp. Not just the tip, but the actual edge is actually very sharp, making this a very usable tool, not just for its intended purposes, but you could also use it just as a substitute piercing or gouging, I guess, implement as well. And finally, out of this little selection of tools, we have this little combo tool. So we have a three-dimensional Phillips that then kind of gets cut out here, and on one side we have a small ruler marking. I'm a big fan of adding rulers to tools because it just makes use of otherwise dead space. And then on the other side we have a cross-cut file. Now this is, I guess, more reminiscent of a nail file, but it is actually aggressive enough that you could take metal to it should you want. And finally, kind of the thing that tells you that this is a Roxon is this crazy fold-out pair of scissors. So you get a full nice handle, they're sprung, and in the handle, amongst this plastic molding, we actually do have a pair of tweezers as well. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the tools in comparison to some similar offerings. So here's the knife blade in comparison to the P1, the K1, the 58mm Swiss Army Knife Classic, and a Leatherman Squirt, specifically the ES4. You can see we have a good size blade, and if we compare that to a full size 91mm, you can see it's actually not that far off. Let's go ahead and check out those scissors. So here's an example of the scissors against some other common competitors. Here's the P1S, As you can see, the scissors are definitely a size up from those, both in terms of jaw length and overall size. Again, fully sprung scissors. However, we have a kind of captive amount. We can't force these open any further like we can with, say, Swiss Army knife scissors. That's comparison to 91mm Swiss Army knife scissors. You can see much longer. And overall, very capable scissors. Whilst we have them open, let's go ahead and get out a test piece. So this is some survival cord. This is the normal 550 paracord with the 7 strands, but it has additionally a cotton thread and a waxed cotton thread. So it's a little bit more intense than cutting through just standard paracord. So both at the fulcrum and at the tip, this does quite eagerly cut through. Now, as you can see, we got a little bit left, and I don't think that's actually failing to cut. I think that's just the jaws themselves pushing the cord a little bit too far out. So let's just getting pushed out a little bit. It is actually cutting through. So again, something like cord, it works very well. One thing that I have also used these scissors for since I've got them is this annoying little problem. So in the UK and I believe in Europe, we have this regulation where bottle caps now have to be attached to the bottle, which makes closing them again a big pain. And if you snap it off, you get pieces of plastic. But in terms of just like trimming that annoying plastic off, these have been great at that. Just snips through plastic, no problem. And similarly, it cuts through zip ties, no issue as well. These are very capable and very useful scissors. So now we've gone through each tool individually, let's go through the specific pros, cons of the tool in general, and my final thoughts on it. So first of all, with the knife blade, it is a very good shape. I must say, I do enjoy this blade shape. It has a good amount of belly, a good piercing point. However, I do find that the actual access to the lock bar is not great. The cutout is purely for the thumb stud, which means that your access to it is just, this is not the most comfortable unlocking experience, let me put it that way. Similarly, as it is a thumb stud and it is quite buried in there, as you can see, I'm using my left hand for this now, and you can do it, but this is obviously going to favor a right-handed person more. And my final criticism of the knife blade is I would love to see a sharpening notch. Just a little notch just cut out by here, which you can do yourself with a needle file just fine enough, but it would be nice to see it come standard. Would just make sharpening and maintaining this guy a lot easier. And that similar locking problem does come over to the saw. I don't understand why so many manufacturers, and this includes Leatherman, makes accessing saws like this nail needing pain in the butt, but like that's less than ideal. I would ideally like a easier way to open that because I tend not to keep nails around. And then you have the same liner lock issue, except you don't have a cutout to get in there. So again, you have to just get your nail or the tip of your thumb in there, and just a relief cut would be nice, although it would compromise the looks a little bit. And when it comes to these sets of tools, overall, actually, I'm very pleased. Now, this is an excellent Phillips. The file is more than aggressive enough for fingernails, and it does do an okay job at metals and other things. However, I would primarily regard this as a fingernail file and just push it into use otherwise if I absolutely had to. I do appreciate the inclusion of the ruler. It is nice, however, it is incredibly small, and if you just threw the ruler instead in here, wouldn't look as clean, but you would get a much more usable ruler. The reamer is actually very, very nice. It kind of reminds me in some ways of the 93mm like Pioneer reamer. Not in its design, the design is very different, but just in terms of like how sharp and useful it actually is, I'm a big fan of that. I also like how all of these tools lock open. It gives you a lot of confidence whilst using them. For this guy, look, as far as combo tools go, it works, right? Like, it does the thing it is meant to do, but I would prefer a little bit more oomph, shall we say, in this tool. First of all, I want to highlight that in terms of like the relative overall size of this multi-tool, this tool is just very stubby needlessly, which makes using the bottle opener nice. This actually works quite nicely, but this could easily be longer. And in comparison to the other Olight multi-tools, I would prefer if we had more of a K1 design. I understand different manufacturer, and this is just based off an existing tool, but if we're doing comparisons underneath the Olight branding, I do appreciate how this has a wire stripping notch and a little bit of an effort at a package opener. I think that would have been much nicer to make this a more compelling tool. I've not used the can opener. I'm never going to test can openers on this channel unless there is a specific demand for it, and I feel comfortable potentially ruining a tool because, let's face it, if you're going to open a can, just use a real can opener. Some can openers do fine. Swiss Army knives I have perfect faith in and have used, but generally speaking I don't open cans in my everyday life enough to warrant testing that. Next up for the scissors, again we have a little bit of an opening thing here. You just kind of have to like dig your nails in here and it works, but I would have preferred like a way to push this out or just an easier way to get in here. That would have been nice. That said, the scissors themselves are fantastic, and whilst we come over here, I like that they've made use of this space with the toothpick in there. But I don't know why other manufacturers don't go for like the toothpick or perhaps like a scribe or a pin or something. Just like if you're going to take scale tools as a leaf from Victorinox, actually include more scale tools. You have the potential to do it and it would make it more compelling. Tweezers themselves are fine. They're not the greatest quality, but they do the job. Feel a bit flimsy, but they will tweeze just fine. And other criticisms of the tool in general is just kind of form factor based. So we have this little glass breaker here. Could it break glass? Probably. But let's face it, this is not the biggest thing to protrude from your hand whilst you're able to brace it with your thumb. Granted, I have slightly a larger hand than average, but this is not a good glass breaking option. It just isn't, and I would rather it not be included because there is a little bit of a high point just needlessly there. And final criticism, I will let you hear for yourself. This is a rattly boy. That rattle is actually this dual purpose switch. It has play in it. And that's the rattle you're hearing. And as this is clipped, because it's on the opposite end of the tool, you can still get some of that rattle. It's a minor annoyance, but it's something to bear in mind. So, final thoughts. You know, I like it. This is a dense, chunky, heavy tool, but I also appreciate how tool rich it is, and even if some of those tools have individual issues, I think overall, especially for the price on sale, I picked this up for I believe £22, this actually came in at a very good value proposition. There are some tweaks. I would like to see the sharpening notch, I'd like to see some better access to the locks, and I'd like to see this rattle removed, and at the very least this glass breaker made more useful if it's going to be there. But for how many tools you get, and quite frankly how good these scissors are, like, these will effectively cut through anything and they don't get caught in the spring mechanism either. Now, sprung scissors have their own longevity issue with the spring baking, and then on most designs you have to warranty them, but Roxon makes a fantastic pair of scissors and it's a compelling reason on its own to carry this. But the knife shape as well makes it a very compelling choice. So that's just why I think. What do you think of the OKS2 by Olight? Let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if you like any Roxon tools in particular. I have been thinking about getting some on the channel. Let me know if you have any recommendations. Whilst you're down there, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that subscribe and like button. It does help grow the channel and I do greatly appreciate it. And whilst you're down there, if you would consider supporting the channel more directly, then please make sure to use our affiliate links, or if you want to support a bit more directly, then please consider a Patreon, YouTube membership, or to coffee donation. But that's just it. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. It's a good tool.